Yo, what's going on, good people? It's your boy 3 Stacks in this thing, baby. Representing Team Kings of Games. And today, I'm going to be showcasing to you guys my take on Valkyrie OTK. Me personally, how I feel about the deck, besides them being light fairies and being beautiful and having amazing artwork, bro. Just so epic. I feel that the deck's best way to be played is obviously as an OTK variant. Unfortunately, Konami did not print these cards with amazing spell speed 2 effects that promote interactivity on your opponent's turn. They also didn't give them very much protection on the field. So naturally, the main playstyle for this deck is you're trying to kill your opponent as fast as possible. And you can do that abusing a couple of the archetype-specific cards in the main deck, which enable for you to finish your opponent off on the follow-up, even if you didn't produce over 8,000 damage in one turn. So it can do a lot of damage even without the assistance of Board Sword, which is kind of a plus. It has some somewhat board spot removal in the form of one monster that's in the archetype. But outside of that, there are some niche interactions you can make on your opponent's turn. But in general, the best way to play the deck is in OTK variant. And the new support the deck got from Savage Strike really helped it in the same direction that it was already headed. So let's go ahead and start the main deck with 3 copies of Seshte. If I am mispronouncing the names, I am sorry. Let's not make a big deal out of it. If people can't pronounce the names, it's not their fault. So we have 3 copies of Seshte. Basically, this card came out in Savage Strike. What it's going to be doing for the Valkyrie archetype is it's going to give us a Tour Guide / Lonefire Blossom / Graph. It just enables you to special summon Valkyrie monsters from your deck, which is really important because oftentimes the OTK can't happen unless you have a certain amount of specific Valkyrie monsters. It can't always just be a bunch of the same ones or a bunch of the lower level ones. Oftentimes the OTK can happen because of the higher level Valkyries. They have a lot better of effects, and some of them allow you to even gain more attack statistic enhancements. You know, banishing stuff and just getting the spot removal as well. So Seshte just giving you 3 extra copies of that is really important. She has an irrelevant effect that doesn't matter. But you're never summoning her in attack position. Then we have 3 copies of Vierte. Again, if I mispronounce the name, I'm sorry. Let's not make a big deal out of that. So Vierte basically is going to be your area 0, as we can say, for any normal spells or traps. So you excavate the top cards of your deck equal to the Valkyrie monsters that you control, which can be pretty devastating because you can get 5 Valkyrie monsters on the field with relative ease if you are blessed with a good hand, which does happen pretty frequently with the deck. It's not an inconsistent deck. It doesn't really have bricky hands. It's just the deck is good at doing what it does. It's just the problem is what it does is not always good enough in every matchup. And realistically, I don't see, as much as I love rogue strategies like this, I don't see this deck winning a YCS or regionals. In fact, I can see this deck even struggling at a local level for the simple fact that it just doesn't have non-targeting, non-destruction removal. If it just had that and it had an ability to be able to do that consistently and also with the spell speed 2 like effect, that would be amazing. That would be what the deck really need. But basically, she excavates the top cards of your deck equal to the Valkyrie monsters that you control, like I said. Then you add 1 excavated normal or normal spell or normal trap from the excavated cards. Basically, that can get you any spell or trap that you want when you think about it realistically, because there's a lot of normal spells and traps that you could be potentially playing in the deck. Her other effect, which is probably better just in the longevity of things, she basically is a Mystic Tomato. Everything's once per turn about her, but it doesn't really matter. It would be nice if her Mystic Tomato effect was in once per turn, because you could chum block with it. Like, they kill one, you use her effect, summon another, kill another, use her effect, summon the final one, and then the last one would summon Seshte. But what you normally do when she dies is you summon Seshte and use Seshte to get another one out from the deck, so that way you could just get more names on board. And it helps you to produce link plays and etc. But when you're going for your big push, keep in mind that you're restricted to fairies. But it's okay because the whole main deck is fairies. Then 3 copies of Draite. Basically, she's going to be searching any Valkyrie card from your deck to your hand. Again, I'm going to have to keep saying it because there's going to be somebody that drops a gigantic, gigantic comment about how the name should be produced, how the name should be pronounced. Like, everybody doesn't know how to pronounce them, and it's not that big of a deal. But she's your archetype searcher. I wish that she was not once per turn. I feel like in an archetype like this that's not overpowered in any way, shape, or form and really doesn't have potential to be a meta contender, it didn't really deserve to get the treatment of Konami trying to balance out the card, because the archetype is already balanced itself. There's nothing overpowered or broken about it. In fact, everything about this deck's pretty fair. If you get OTK'd by it, you can't really be mad at it when you think about how this deck operates. Just the functional mechanics of Valkyries are not really overpowered at all. She's your searcher, so it's nice to have these 9 cards for your consistency purposes, enabling you to dig for your ride. All 9 of these cards get you access to Ride of the Valkyries. Ride of the Valkyries essentially is the win condition of the deck because it enables you to search your Mischief, and Mischief is how you basically just time skip your opponent as if you're as if you're hit. You basically just hit your opponent, time skip them, go straight to your next battle phase and finish them with whatever incremental damage you need to produce. But yeah, this searches Valkyrie, this can search Valkyrie, and this can just tutor her out to get Rides of the Valkyrie anyway. So Rides of the Valkyrie is the win condition. Then next up, we have 3 copies of Zweite, I believe. She's basically the spot removal one. She can target a monster your opponent controls and destroy it. She has another effect that doesn't really come up, but it basically works with your continuous spells. I'm not playing a lot of their continuous spells. In fact, I'm only playing one. I nicknamed it the Chicken Head, but I'm only playing the Chicken Head one. She's a chicken head. I'm just keeping it real. But that's the one that I felt was the best one, particularly if you want to play competitively. So yeah, even though the deck's not competitive, you have to do something right. You have to fix the deck up and make it playable. It has to be above average. Like, this is still close to a tier 3 deck, but I still, as much as I would love to give it that, I still feel even this deck like would barely be able to hang with tier 3 decks unless they're really susceptible to like a board wipe, which a lot of decks aren't susceptible to board wipes currently, but I feel like if you're paired up with the right matchup and the deck's really fragile to board wipes, like for example ABCs, you could definitely just OTK your opponent. I'm not I wasn't calling anybody out there. 3 copies of Ursa. I just call her Ursa because her name's very similar to Ursa from Fairy Tail. I don't care how her name is really pronounced. I'm just going to call them what I want to call them, right? These are my cards. No offense intended. So this girl, I really don't like her effect that much. The first one where she's special by a spell effect, you can add Mischief, because oftentimes you're not really trying to grab Mischief back from the graveyard to hand in the first place. Like, normally when you resolve 1 Mischief, you've gone for game at that point. Like, if it ever comes up, it comes up, but I really feel like they didn't have to give us that effect because you can search out another Ride, and Ride can easily just search out another Mischief. I feel like this effect could have been something different, but it does have another effect besides that, which is kind of relevant. As a quick effect, if you control another Valkyrie, basically she can banish a monster from your opponent's grave, and her attack becomes the original attack of that. So she can potentially be the biggest Valkyrie monster on your field. The issue is, a lot of the effects, outside of like the Searcher, which is good, the Tour Guide, which is good, and this girl, which kind of lets you dig deeper for better cards, everything else is pretty underwhelming. Like, target a monster your opponent controls is pretty underwhelming. I mean, don't get me wrong, like if you pair it with, for example, your Celestial Transformation, you have like a pop on your opponent's turn. 1 pop. I mean, who can't play through that? Like, that's what I mean. Like, it's pretty underwhelming. I mean, every one of them have 2 effects, but they should have made both effects really powerful. Like, this deck really deserved it, but who knows? They might still get more support. But yeah, that's it for Ursa. She kind of does look like Ursa. If she had the red hair, you would definitely say it. And then 3 copies of Broomhilde. Broomhilde is probably one of the better ones. Basically, she's unaffected by your opponent's spell effects. Thank God that we have somewhat of a good Sky Striker matchup. Because when I say a Widow Anchor can really just dominate you, just 1 negate can really hurt this deck. And it's not necessarily hand traps. It's direct interaction specific negations, like a negate the activation type effect. Stuff like that really hurts this deck. This deck cannot play through negations. That's why you have to main the board wipes, I feel. And you can even go so far as to play Kaijus, etc. to make your matchups easier that are weaker. Like, if you're weak in the Sky Striker matchup or against Thunder Dragons, you know, you can incorporate Kaijus and, like, for example, Dino Arrestor or Pancreatops in your main deck, and that can assist you, but I tried to keep it pure. You know, I just wanted to play Fairies because I love Fairies. Basically, she's unaffected by spell effects. She gains 500 attack for each monster your opponent controls, and then basically she can protect your Valkyries from being destroyed by battle by reducing her defense by 1,000. Since her defense is 2,000, you can only use that effect twice while she's on the field, but you can easily mitigate that by just resummoning her from the graveyard or summoning a fresh one from hand. But yeah, they do have their own theme, Soul Charge, which thank God finally we got something. But even that, Konami tried to make that balance and made it worse. So that's it for the monsters. I chose to not play any hand traps or kaijus or anything like that. I wanted to save the room because the space that I had room for like 7 cards. And I was like, okay, I could play 7 hand traps. Like, we could try to go for a simplify the game state kind of thing. And I was like, you know what? No, it's not going to work. 7 hand traps is not enough. We're not banking on just drawing 1 of the 7 hand traps, hoping that that's enough. Like, For example, I was like, we could just play 3 Droll. Droll's pretty impactful, right? We could draw our opponent and OTK them, but this deck still has problems pushing over big monsters. Even Drolling a Danger player, they have no problem getting big monsters on the field. A Thunder Dragon player could easily put a Colossus on board under a Droll. There's just so many instances where you can Droll your opponent, but they still end on something that's just too big for you to get over. Oftentimes, a Colossus is just way too difficult for this deck because, like I said, it doesn't have that non-targeting, non-destroying removal. So, yeah, I just felt instead of playing any hand traps, we were just going to maximize on every good Valkyrie. I do not play the Fortune Chariot because I just did not think it was a good card. It definitely is not conducive with the playstyle I'm going for. But I decided to play 3 Lightning Vortex. We really want to bring this card back, right? This card had been in the side deck for my new hero variation for a while until they started putting out monsters that just couldn't be destroyed. And now Guard Dragon Crusaders are like putting up a card that belongs to one of my favorite decks, Galaxy Photons, on their board just to make it indestructible. So I was just like, dang, like now I can't even sign my Lightning Vortexes for my heralds. But yeah, you definitely want to be playing as many board wipes as you possibly can. So what I did was the 7 cards that I told you about that would have been hand traps, I opted for these cards. Lightning Vortexes, Twins, Dark Hole, and Raigeki. Either way, just kind of just trying to clear as many cards as we possibly can. Because with this deck, if the field's wide open, you can kill any deck. But the problem is, not any deck is just going to let you clear their field. But if we just put it in simple, blatant terms, any deck with the field wide open, this deck can kill them. But also, keep in mind, it's not like this is the only deck that can do that. Almost any deck can do that these days. Like, especially with access to Borrelsword, any deck that can consistently make Borrelsword can easily just OTK. But this deck has to be able to kill your opponent when their field's wide open. Why? Because this deck can really struggle with just attacking over monsters. And then when you have to attack over monsters, sometimes the incremental damage, you don't get enough damage output. And even resolving under the right of the Valkyries and getting your Mischief. Your Mischief gives you another turn, another battle phase, and you're still not able to go for 8,000. So it's just so much easier if you could just clear the field going for the OTK. And the Twins are here for cards like There Can Only Be One and Widow Anchors and trying to bait the Salamangreat counter trap. Because that deck, we can actually OTK them. Like, if we open Twin against the Salamangreat matchup, we can definitely OTK them, which is pretty easy. Just got to clear the back row, man. The hand traps really don't matter. This deck does not lose to Droll because it doesn't really do any searching outside of one search. Ash Blossom can hurt the deck if it has a bad hand, but if it has a good hand, it can easily play through an Ash Blossom, especially because the particular cards that can be ashed are trying to fetch cards that you already played 3 copies of in the first place, and then you have draw power in the form of 3 Extravagance. This deck doesn't really go into the extra deck, except on the follow-up plays, and for me, the follow-up plays are naturally the extra turn you get, so I really wasn't finding myself going into the extra deck a lot. I mean, there are toolboxings, like there's XYZ toolboxing that you can do. So I do play certain targets for those specific interactions. Like, don't get me wrong, I didn't just play a crappy 15-card extra. By the way, this is a proxy. This is not a real Extravagance. But I didn't want to make a crappy 3-card. Look at that. Look at that. That really looks like a Desires. I didn't want to play a crappy extra deck because of Extravagance. I wanted to play cards that realistically will come up, and also at the same time, like, my whole extra deck is spendable because this deck can win without the extra deck. So we have our 3 Extravagance. You don't draw at all. This deck has 0 draw power, so it doesn't hurt at all. We have 3 copies of Route, and fun thought, if your opponent ashes this and you have another one, you can activate it. Because there's no stipulation that says that you cannot activate another one. In addition to that, it says after this card resolves, you cannot draw cards for the rest of the turn. But if your opponent Ash Blossoms the effect, it did not fully resolve. Keep that in mind. 3 Ride of the Valkyries. This is the win condition of the deck. You special as many Valkyries as you possibly can from your hand. Every one of them are minuses. The Valkyries playstyle is just to simply just -1 for every single piece of board presence that you can accumulate. It's all -1s. The only one that can pay for herself is the Stratos that's on legs. Yeah, that's the only one. But this is the win condition. The reason being is because it puts the damage you need on board and then searches out your Mischief, and your Mischief is how you normally do it. Oftentimes, what I found myself doing was when I couldn't OTK under Mischief on my follow-up, which is really cool that you can get an incredible follow-up through Mischief, because what it does is it simplifies the game state in this turn. Whatever your opponent has is all they're going to be able to use for this turn and the next. So you don't have to worry about playing through interruptions on the follow-up that this gives you, because you already played through those interruptions on the turn before that. This gives you an extra turn, and you know your opponent no longer has any more interruptions because they did not get to draw for turn. So them not drawing any new cards and not having a refreshed board or having an anime level comeback makes a difference, because then on the follow-up, you can start making your extra deck plays. Like normally, if I didn't like extravagance this away, like I'll go into Hippo Shinigen, and then off of Hippo Shinigen, I'll go for Paradise Smasher, which nobody plays this card. And this is a really good card, you guys. And this is normally the best way that my deck can survive. Like I had to make it, I tried to make it as good as possible without like playing hand traps and stuff like that. Well, yeah, we'll get to the extra deck when we get there. We have 3 Celestial Transformation. It just special summons 1 from hand. It does have kind of like a balancing issue, like where Konami made this card and tried to balance it and just made it kind of bad for your damage pushes. So naturally, if you lose a dice roll for some reason and your opponent actually just makes you go first, this is quite literally the only interruption you can get off of your opponent. Summon the level 5 chick, pop a monster. That's it. If that's not enough, which it's never going to be enough, you're just going to get killed. But yeah, and sometimes it helps you in your pushes on your turn. Like when you have a Sesh Stay in hand, you just special her off of this, get her effect, you know, special 1 for neck, or special the chick that can add mischief if you ever need that interaction. 2 Final Lights, I didn't want to play 3. I knew that it was clogged. In fact, even at 2, I find that it clogs, but at the same time, I did not want it to be the actual Soul Charge. The Soul Charge was a Saki 1-of, and I didn't want this to be a Saki 1-of. I felt that I wanted to take advantage of the fact that it is a Soul Charge that the deck can play at more than 1. Since Soul Charge was at 1 and is now banned, I felt that it was only fair to try to be as unfair as possible with this card. 3 can break, but I definitely recommend 2 so that you can see it enough. But the issue is your opponent can special summon monsters from their grave with 2,000 or less attack, which kind of sucks. At the same time, it's not every matchup's not going to be able to do that. Definitely, I would say Salamander Greats can just swarm the field as much as they want. Decks like Ultra Guys can do it, but like Thunder Dragons and stuff like that, like their monsters are too big. So you can Soul Charge with this card and you won't really hurt yourself that much. But this is another way for you to get your follow-ups. Like if I have this already and I'm going for my push and I resolve Mischief to skip my opponent's turn and still couldn't kill them, I'm going to basically link into a big link monster. Like I can go like Hoshinigen or just flat out go into Borload and then activate Final Light and bring them all back, and then make, for example, what I would go for is a Giant Hand or a Tornado Dragon plus Paradise Smasher or Artifact Dorendo, which gives me 2 interruptions, and it's better than nothing. So like this deck can put out negates, but the problem is the way it puts out negates is inefficient, and you really do minus. You don't really generate enough advantage to consistently do it. This is the chicken head spell that I was talking about. She makes all your Valkyrie monsters unable to be targeted or destroyed by card effects. It has another effect which can be relevant if you resolve the red reboot or just happen to be playing Salamander Greats. You'll know what the back row is, but basically you declare a name and then you reveal a set card on the field. And if that set card is the declared name, you banish it. So if you know your opponent has Roar, you just call Roar, and it gets banished unless they negate the activation of this, which they never will because they're not going to read this chicken-headed card because this is Valkyries. And then sometimes you reboot your opponent and they set a really good card. Naturally, like that's what they want, and you're just like, okay, the card that you just set off of the reboot, I'm just going to banish it because I know its name. And I only have 1 Mischief because I was only able to pick up 1. I definitely would play 3. Even though it can break, you just got to play 3. Like, this is a win condition. And then 1 Reasoning, because I have so many different levels in this deck. It's actually crazy. Reasoning is just a whole nother enabler. I don't play 1 for 1, even though 1 for 1 is potentially good in this deck. I just had bad experience with 1 for 1. I don't understand what it was. I think more or less it really was the hands where I was opening Twin and Lightning Vortex, and 1 for 1 just really didn't help. Like minusing too much, because like you're going basically at a -4 just for you to have to special summon monsters from hand with only 2 cards in hand, and that was really sucking. So I was like salty, and I was like, I'm taking this 1 for 1 out because I cannot make plays with 2 cards in hand with this deck. One of those cards has to be Ride, and if you're using Ride to special 1, you're not doing anything. Extra deck is Photon Strike Bouncer and M7. M7 is just the problem solver of the deck. You can't get over cards that can't be destroyed, which is an issue. So this can just get over those. This is a negation that you can end on if you don't have the level 5. I find that the level 5 is the most important, not only because it just can destroy monsters, which is not really that relevant, but it gives me access to the best extra deck monsters for this archetype's playstyle. So the rank 5s you end on are better. This bad boy right here is crazy good, and I don't understand why decks aren't playing it. I'm playing this in my Cyber Dragons now. I'm very glad that I was able to find this mixed up in all my cards that I have. I'm going to have to read you guys what Paradise Smasher does because it's actually a really great card. And it comes with the risk, but it's well worth it. During your main phase 1, you can detach 2 materials from this card. By the way, generic rank 5. You can make it with even more level 5s if you want to. Detach 2 materials from this card. Each player rolls a 6-sided die twice. The player with the higher total cannot activate monster effects or declare an attack until the end of the next turn. This card is literally an as-a-thought. Better, it's a true king of all calamities, aka chlamydia, for your opponent. Why? Because this card also has another ability where, check this out. Once per turn, if either player rolls a 6-sided die while this card has material, you can treat one of the results as 7. So I'm almost guaranteeing that I'm going to make sure that the person, because if you read it right here, basically the player with the higher total cannot activate. So if you read that, basically this is a dice roll that you want to lose. Normally everybody's like, oh, I want to win the dice roll. I want to go first. This is a dice roll that you absolutely want to lose because if you win the dice roll, you can't play Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's what I love about this card. It's generic. It could be bad if people were woke, and I'm trying to keep you guys woke, you know? Like, I always want to share every piece of good that I can that I'm not trying to keep to myself. This was some good that I didn't mind sharing with you guys. This card's going to prevent your opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And you can treat one of their dice that they roll as a 7, so you're nearly guaranteeing that they're going to lose that dice roll. It's a low chance. But if you lose the dice roll, it doesn't really matter because you're playing Valkyries, and if you make this card, there's nothing much you can do at that point anyways. Durandal, another really great card, you guys. You're just trying to end on interruptions. And then for the rank 4s, I went a little heavier on them because it's easier to just get a level 4s out for the simple fact that you can just normal summon her. The level 5s and 6s have to be special through effects. So we have Baguska for my bad hands. This is like, oh, I couldn't OTK you in on a Baguska. And you can only do that on the follow-up that Mischief gives you. Because the turn that you use Mischief, when you activate it, you have to control only Valkyries. You have to only control Valkyries. So whenever you're going on the next battle phase that you get off of it, then you can make cards like this, Tornado and Giant Hand. I'm just trying to end on interruptions, you know, like you just... the reason why I play these is to validate what I said about this deck, how it just really doesn't have ways to make plays on your opponent's turn, and that's a major weakness, and I felt like we can mitigate that just with the extra deck cards. And then Boar Sword, Boar Load, and Griffin. Griffin, I make more than these, but these do come up. Trust me, they really do. A lot of times I make Boar Sword when I have too many of the little Valkyries, the weak ones, and I'm basically like, Mischief's not going to do me any justice, so I just use the little ones to make this and attack with this. And if you just use this in Broomhilde, you can OTK. Broomhilde is going to be huge. She's like already huge, just base statistics. And you can just attack, and just go for game. So another win condition. And it's really easy to make. You can spam a lot. Borolo, just another problem solver. Again, I can't get over Colossuses for my life. And then we have one Griffin. I make this like almost every game, just testing with this deck. And then we have Hoshinogen, Phoenix, Service, Akashic, and Underclock for the Link 2s. I didn't play extra copies of anything because I didn't feel that, oh, I just absolutely can't play without any of these, because realistically, this deck plays more without its extra deck than it does with its extra deck. The extra deck is literally for, like I said, niche interactions where it comes up when it comes up. You just want to take advantage and seize that opportunity. Thank you guys so much for watching my Valkyrie deck profile. Thank you very, very much, you guys. I really do appreciate it. God bless you guys. Make good choices. Don't hurt your brain cells. Stay tuned for future content and have a beautiful day, all right? Stay positive. Peace.